Shri Ganesh Jaya 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 Ganesh Mahadeva 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 Narayana 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 Kalyana Rupaya Kalau Jananam Kalyana Dhatre Karuna Sudhabdhe Kambvadi Divyayudha Satkaraya Vatalayadhisha Namo Namaste Narayana 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 Brahme Muhurte Pritasva Bhakti Sandarshitas Sarvottama Vishwarupa Swataila Samsevaka Roga Hartre Vatalayadhisha Namo Namaste Narayana 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 Balan Swakiyan Tavasannidhani Divyannadanat Paripalayadbhi Sada Patadbhischa Purana Ratnam Samsevitayastu Namo Namaste Narayana 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 Nityannadatre Matra cha pitra cha tatodhavena Sampujitayastu Namo Namaste Narayana 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 Anandaramakhyamakhipranitam Stotram pathet yastu narastrikalam Vatalaya sasyasya krupa balena Labheda sarvani cha mangalani Narayana 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 Shuklam Baradaram Vishnum Sasivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyayet Sarva Vignopashantaye Sharada Sharadam Bhoja Vadana Vadanam Bhuje Sarvada Sarvada Smakam Sannidhim Sannidhim Kriyat. Om Shri Ganesha Sharada Gurubhyo Namaha Shri Shivaya Gurave Namaha Om Namo Narayanaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Tanno Vishnu Prachodayat. So in the last session we finished the Guru Vandanam. Today is Devata Namaskara, and Sutta proceeds with that with this verse. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet. So that is a verse. The Padacheda would be Narayanam Namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tataha jayam udirayet. That would be the Paracheta. And the Anvaya would be Narayanam Narottamam Naram Cheva Saraswatim Devim Namaskritya Tataha Jayam Udirayet. So the meaning is, after bowing to the divine sages Narayana and Nara, and the Supreme Person Sri Krishna, and Goddess Saraswati, the goddess of speech, and sage Vyasa, the Guru, one should then recite or start the Srimad Bhagavatam, which enables one to conquer the cycle of birth and death, as well as the instability of the mind that is natural in Kali Yuga. So there are several people he is offering this obeisances. First, let us look at the word Nara. Later we will see Narayana, etc. But in the beginning we have to worship Ganesha, Saraswati and Guru. That is why Devim Saraswatim, and in the case of Guru we have Vyasa. So the meaning of the word Nara is Na Riyate iti Naraha, which means the Jiva or the individual, the individuality itself. The individuality is Jiva. The Jivas are of four main groups according to their Gati or states of existence. They are the Devas or the divine beings, the Naras or human beings, or Narakas or inhabitants of hell, and then Tiryaks or those belonging to the lower animal kingdom or the plant kingdom. So these are the four beings that comprise the samsara, which results from the karmic confinement of jivas, depending on which a certain jiva will be born in any one of these gatis or states of existence. So moksha is through jnana, breaking free from this samsaric cycle of births and deaths from any one of these four gatis and reaching that abode where there is no birth and death. So the jiva that reaches this stage beyond samsara attains that goal. As long as the jiva is in samsara, it is bound by this karmic confinement, which will lead to attainment of further various births. So what is the problem in being a samsari? Because while you are a samsari, the jiva's knowledge is limited and its nature, the sukha swarupa, is impaired, being bound by these various karmas. And then there is no scope for its pure joyful nature to manifest itself. And thereby it starts mainly depending upon the sense organ as to a direction in life or for acquiring knowledge. And its life is mainly determined by the environment, consisting of random objects presented to the sense organs. Naturally, it is attracted by pleasures derived from the sensual pursuits and repulsed by antithetical feelings. So till the proper time comes when it is able to realize its true swarupam or nature of nobility and purity, it continues to be in this sensual pleasures, which only makes it move from one birth to another, from one gati to another, in an unending series of births and deaths. Like Acharya says, Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam, Punarapi Janani Jadhare Shayanam. So what is the solution that would deliver them from these sorrows and worries? The answer is given by Vyasa in the beginning of this Bhagavatam, in the Mangala Sloka. Narayanam Namaskritya. So with this, Maharshi Vedavyasa points out that surrendering to Sriman Narayana and chanting the name of Sri Krishna or the Sriman Narayana Ashtakshara Mahamantra will easily deliver everyone from their sorrows and worries. Sri Krishna, who is the prime cause of the creation, we referred it in the beginning of Bhagavatam. Sachidananda Rupaya Vishwa Utpatyadi Hetave. He is the cause of creation of this universe. And he was also referred to as Satyam. Satyam Param Dhimahi, the very first verse. And that is the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam. So in the very beginning, Vyasa introduces this subject to the readers by establishing the identity of Lord Sri Krishna with Satyam and invokes that supreme truth for the successful completion of the difficult task of composing this Bhagavatam by taking this Narayana Ashtakshari Mahamantra. So there are several mantras for Mahavishnu, but among all these mantras, 3 of them are very, very important. So these are the 3 great mantras of Mahavishnu. Number 1 is the 6-lettered Namo Vishnave. It is known as the Shadakshari. And then the 8-lettered word called as Namo Narayanaya, which is called the Ashtakshari. And then the last one is Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, which is known as Dwadashakshari. So Om is added in the beginning to all the 3 of them in the Vedic context, and it is omitted in the Tantric context. So these are the 3 mantras: Namo Vishnave, Namo Narayanaya, Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The Yajurveda, the Gayatri mantra of Mahavishnu is presented in the Mahanarayana Upanishad. And that Gayatri, Vishnu Gayatri, it combines all these 3 mantras. Narayanaya Vidmahe Vasudevaya Dhimahi Tanno Vishnu Prachodayat. So among these, the 3 Vishnu mantras, the highest and the most important is the Ashtakshari, or the 8-lettered mantra known as Namo Narayanaya. Vyasa narrates the greatness of this Ashtakshara to Shuka. Ashtaksharam imam mantram sarvadukha vinasanam japaputra mahabuddhe yedi siddhim abhipsyasi. Dear Putra, O my wise son, Mahabuddhe, if you wish siddhi or success, then chant Namo Narayanaya, Ashtaksharam, which is the dispeller of all dukkham or sorrows. Now let us look at the meaning of Om Namo Narayanaya. It begins with Om. And Om has got 4 syllables. The first one is A, the second one is U, and the third one is Ma. And what is the 4th? When you say Om, it is followed by a silence. So this silence is the 4th. It is out of this silence that Om rises. And it goes back into this silence. So these are the 4 syllables of Om. The letter A, it refers to Anandam or unalloyed happiness. The letter U refers to Satyam or existence. Sat, it is known as Unmai in Tamil. As light cannot be separated from fire, happiness cannot be separated from existence. You have to be existing first to be happy. And the letter M, which is the short for the Sanskrit ma, it refers to jnanam. How so? Because etymologically, if you see the vyutpatti, it is derived from manajnane, which means that the Brahman's essential nature is knowledge. So this Om, the word itself conveys Saguna Brahman, which is Sri Krishna, whose nature is all-knowing, joyful awareness. That is the meaning of Krishna. And the silence the Om arises from and goes back into, that is the Nirguna Brahman. All this is pointed out by the first syllable of Ashtakshari Mahamantra. And then you have Om Namo Na. The second syllable Na means nothing can be compared to Sri Krishna. That such comparison is impossible because nothing comparable, even similar to in character, ever exists or will exist. This the Shruti, the Veda declares in the Chandogya Upanishad, in the 6th chapter, the 2nd khanda, the very first mantra, it says, Sadeva Somye Damagra Asit Ekameva Dvitiyam. Hey Soumya, Brahman is the only one, Ekameva. There is no second or equal to it. Advitiyam. As there is no other object which is eternal, pure, limitless, with the characteristics of pure awareness and joy within or without its own kind, Sri Krishna is unique and uncomparable. But when we hear about these two entities, Jivatma, the individual soul, which is responsible for giving life to this body, and Paramatma or Brahman, Krishna, the supreme consciousness, this leads to a question, how Brahman is without a second, because we experience the second. The Upanishad declares that while Sri Krishna is omniscient and the embodiment of joyful awareness, Jivatma is also of the same nature, but it is always under the spell of sufferings because it is full of avidya or imperfect knowledge. Hence, it could be argued as to how these two entities are one and the same when their properties are diametrically opposite. The answer from the Upanishad is that they are treated differently only in vyavahara or customary practice. But in reality, paramarthataha, they are just one and the same. Just like the image of an object in the mirror, Jivatman is nothing but the reflection of this consciousness on the mental faculties or the antakarana upadhi that are enwrapped by the wheel of ajnanam or ignorance. Once this wheel is removed by self-knowledge, the image merges with the object. So also, Jivatman, the sense of individuality, merges with the Ishta, the Paramatma, thereby proving the identity of these two superficially different entities as one. Therefore, Brahman is unique without a second, Advitiyam. This is the meaning of the second syllable Na. And the third syllable Ma means mana or dimension, something which is measured. Here also etymologically, it is derived from mana parimane All objects within the reach of our perception are bound by time and space. So, on this basis, if we try to locate Brahman in a particular place or a particular time so that we can experience it, we can feel it, it would be impossible because Brahman is beyond time and space. It has neither beginning or end, as it is eternal and all-pervading. One cannot say that it exists only in a particular time or in a particular area or a place, or when it was born or when it would end. Because Brahman does not have the Shad Vikaras or the 6 changes that all things that are born, that are created, undergo. Like Astitvam or birth, Jayamanatvam or continuance, Vruddhi or growth, Viparinama or change, metamorphosis, or Kshaya, to perish, or Nasha, death, or any other similar attributes are not there in Brahman. Similarly, Bhagavan is not limited by space. So then the joyful conclusion is that it is only one non-dual, all-knowing, joyful awareness itself. The next part of the mantra is, we finished Om Namo. The next part of the mantra is Narayanaya. This Narayanaya itself has Ashtakshara in it. If you split it up, Nagarotravarti, Akarotravarti, Rephotravarti, Yakarotravarti, Nakarotravarti, Yakarotravarti, Yakara. You will get 8 syllables here itself. So let us see the meaning of Narayana. The word Narayana is a combination of 2 words, Naraha and Ayanam. If you take the Bahuvrihi Samasa, in Sanskrit grammar it is called the possessive compound of this word Narayana, it would form as Naraha Ayanam Esya, which means to whom Naras are the resting place. So this establishes Narayana as Antaryami. This means he is the indweller of all. That's the meaning of Narayana. And if you take the Tatpurusha Samasa of this word, which is Naranam Ayanam, which is called a determinative compound, which means the objective of all the human beings, Naras, that will emphasize the Bahirvyapti, because Naranam Ayanam, the objective of all humans. So this means he envelops everything. This is also brought out in the Narayana Sukta as Antarbahishcha tat sarvam vyapya Narayana stitaha. Whatever there is in this world that can be seen or heard, Lord Narayana indwells in all of them as Antaryami and envelops them as Bahirvyapya Sthita from the outside. So both this Tattvam, both the meaning of Narayana is brought out by this Narayana Sukta mantra. So in the Sampradaya, generally this Shishya receives this Diksha or initiation of Ashtakshara from the Guru or preceptor, and then he chants it, meditates on Narayana with focus, with the concept of Ananyatvam, of unity, with that consciousness. And this leads eventually to enlightenment. When the Brahman, the Ishta, the Bhagavan becomes aparoksham or clear. For all others, it will continue to be paroksham or unclear, blurred. So it therefore follows that it is extremely difficult to understand. It cannot be perceived by the unenlightened ones. Then can the enlightened ones who have experienced Bhagavan describe it to us? Not possible. Why? As soon as they are enlightened, they are granted upashamaha and they merge with that. And there is no question of their returning to this world to communicate that experience with us. This is beautifully brought out by Ramakrishna Paramahamsa in a story. Ramakrishna compares it to a doll made of salt, which is enlivened and then sent to measure the depth of the ocean. The doll dissolves in the ocean while measuring and loses its doll identity. The same way, the enlightened souls merge with the infinite and attain everlasting joy. Brahman is totally separated from worldly objects like this body, the sensory experiences like sickness, pleasure, pain, etc. Brahman creates these illusory things by its power of illusion called Maya. Just as Aindrajalikaha, a Maya Jalakaha, a magician who creates things by the sleight of his hand. Brahman also does that. It is not connected with worldly matters, just as the magician is not connected with the things he apparently creates through magic. The word Brahman is derived from the root brih, which means to grow, to expand, to cause to grow, to nourish. So what causes to grow is Brahman, and Brahman is associated with this Maya, which has become this universe consisting of this Stula, Sukshma or subtle and gross objects, and hence the name Brahman. It is the same Brahman that shines effulgently with all its Kalyana Gunas, attributes as Sri Krishna. Such difference between Saguna, the attributes or the manifested, or Nirguna, the one without attributes or the unmanifested, is only due to the involvement of Maya. The Upanishad again explains this clearly in the Brihadaranyaka, in the 4th chapter, the 4th khanda, the 19th mantra. Manasevanudrashtavyam neha nanasti kinchana mrityos samrityumapnoti yaihananeva pashyati. This Brahman is to be known through the mind alone. It should be understood according to the instructions of a teacher. There is no duality whatsoever in it. He who sees duality, division, as it were, he goes from death to death. Whatever duality is perceived in it is only apparent, being superimposed on it by our own ignorance. So Brahman is beyond words and thoughts, and it is hardly accessible to even those practicing all the practices, rituals flawlessly with great devotional fervor. At the same time, it is easily available for the mere asking, explicitly presented in this Srimad Bhagavatam, shining effulgently in the form of Sri Krishna. By meditating on him and by chanting the Mahamantra, Bhagavan fulfills the earthly desires of his devotees and also bestows emancipation on those who worship him as Brahman with a sincere desire for moksha or freedom. So there is a beautiful verse beseeching anyone who wishes to be free from sadness to chant this Ashtakshara mantra. That verse is He Martya Paramam Hitam Srunutavo Vakshyami Sanshepataha Samsararnavamapadurmi Bahulam Samyak Pravishyastitaha Nana Jnanamapasya Chetasi Namo Narayanayethyamum Mantram Sapranavam Pranama Sahitam Pravartayadhvam Muhu. So in this verse, he points out that the chanting of Sriman Narayana's Ashtakshara Mahamantram will easily free all from their sorrows and worries. He says, He Martyaha Samsararnavam Apadurmi Bahulam Samyak Pravishyasthitaha. O mortal beings who have submerged yourself fully in this ocean of sadness, samsara. which is filled with the waves of sorrow and strife. Apat urmi. Urmi means waves. Paramam hitam shrunuta. Please listen carefully as I briefly tell you a way out of this mess. Nana jnanamapasya chetasi. Just put aside your various attempts of finding joy and gaining knowledge, and instead Namo Narayanayethyamum mantram sapranavam pranama sahitam. Begin constantly chanting this Mahamantra called Om Namo Narayanaya. Pravartayadhvam muhuhu. While surrendering to Narayana, again and again chant this. Swasti prajabhyah paripalayantam nyayena margena mahim mahisha go brahmanebhyah shubhamastu nityam loka samasta sukhino bhavantu sarve bhavantu sukhinah sarve santu niramaya sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om shanti shanti shanti.